Malachi 4, verses 5 and 6. I go ahead and hold this recording just because when looking over it, I've stray into a subject that YouTube probably doesn't like, so I wouldn't post this. And
They can deal with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, you think it'd be innocent, but I've seen a lot of people lose their channels for simply talking about fathers. Anyway, Malachi 4, verses 5 and 6. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And he will turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and the hearts of children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land with a decree of utter destruction. Now, to be fair, we must talk about the context. And this is the last two verses of the Old Testament, just before we have the period of biblical silence. God has said all He has wanted to say until the New Testament picks up. So at this point, Malachi is foretelling or prophesying the coming of John the Baptist, and we can cross-reference Luke chapter 1, verse 17. It says, okay, so in the context, it's angel talking to Zechariah, and verse 16, beginning verse 16, and he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go before them in the spirit and power of Elijah, and to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and disobedient to the wisdom of just, and to make ready for the Lord a people prepared. So we see that one of John's purposes was to prepare the people, was to get the people ready for the coming of the Messiah. One, so they can be ready to receive the Messiah, and two, well, back in Malachi, lest I come and strike the land with a decree of destruction. It's kind of interesting, you think about it. A couple of reasons for this, and kind of one in the context, of course, is that lest I come and strike the land with a decree of destruction. One view of this is that John's preparing the way so that the Lord wouldn't come, see the rampant wickedness that Israel is committing, and just decide to devote the whole land to destruction. As there's some biblical examples beforehand. Anyway, here's an application. Now, this is where you get in trouble. And I submit to you this, is that we are being destroyed because we have despised our fathers, sometimes physical, but definitely our Heavenly Father, our fathers in the faith. And if you want to expand that definition, those who have come before, our ancestors, our fathers before, we allowed our history to be taken from us, and then we wonder why we have no footing, we have no rooting, and we have no idea what's going on. Where you might not like a lot of the things that our forefathers did, they did build a nation in which we now live. They did keep the faith and pass it down to their children, which we are now participating in. Can't be all bad. On this point, let's cross-reference Ephesians 6, 2 and 3. Verse 1 for the full context here. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. As I've mentioned, that we have despised our Heavenly Father and our earthly fathers, and as a result, and if you keep track of these things, like sometimes I've noticed, and I made this application has been made before, that life expectancy has actually literally gone down. The current generation now is not expected to live as long as previous generation, which is, and our culture and American culture is something that has never happened before. Never. It has happened in history, but I don't have time and it'd be a little too depressing to tell you exactly when that happened. um, so that's one reason. Another one is one reason why Malachi prophesied that John is going to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and children to the fathers is because those hearts are supposed to be oriented that way to begin with. How about Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 and 7? And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. And then we can contrast that to Ephesians 6:4, kind of jumping around this tonight here. 6:4, an admonition to fathers. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. See, the thing is that those hearts were supposed to be oriented that way to begin with, so that children will listen to their fathers, and fathers can care for their children. So it was nothing new. It's the way it was supposed to be to begin with. So, and in closing, how about some application? One, the children's part. Listen to your parents. Don't ignore. Been around the block a few more times. And that doesn't just go for little children or teenagers. Yes, those who are adults still need to listen to our parents because we ought to honor our father and mother, and they might know a thing or two that we haven't yet learned. Anyway, and for the father's part, I mentioned this before, but we need to teach because God specifically, and you can cross-reference a couple of the verses we just looked at, Ephesians 6:4 and Deuteronomy 6:6 and 7, that God has given fathers the responsibility for the education of children. Yes, we might decide to send them to school, might homeschool them, might even teach them ourselves, but the responsibility has been given by God to fathers. So, in short, I thought we just look at Malachi for one more time and then draw a lesson out of that. So, thank you for your attention.